news outlets get to go on day after day and cite unnamed sources, use stories without sources, have, you mentioned the Scaramucci story where they had to have reporters resign.
We're here to ask you questions.
Right.
You're here to provide the answers. And what you just did is inflammatory to people all over the country who look at it and say, see, once again, the president is right and everybody else out here is fake media. And everybody in this room is only trying to do their job.
And the congregation of political watchers said, amen, hallelujah. After months of the press being battered and bullied from the podium in the White House press room, reporter Brian Karem pushed back. Karem confronted Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders after she took time during the briefing for the kind of whining, press-bashing comments that have become standard fare from Donald Trump and the people who speak for him. But perhaps adding to Karem's frustration, that time was more precious at Tuesday's briefing because it was one of the dwindling opportunities to hold this administration to account in a live on-camera broadcast. Last week, the White House banned cameras from the daily briefing 3 times, prompting CNN to go so far as to send a sketch artist to capture the scene in the room. And they kept most of the briefings off camera again this week, allowing a live broadcast on only 2 days. So Karem's stand this week came amid mounting pressure on the press to do something, anything, to defend its role as the watchdog over transparency and accountability in the White House. There are so many options. Boycott the briefings, turn a camera on and see what happens, whip out your cell phone and live stream, or continue to do what we've been doing, which is basically nothing. And following their rules, like we're covering a perfectly normal presidency. And joining me now are Katy Tur, MSNBC Anchor extraordinaire and author of the upcoming book, which we will buy. Unbelievable, my front row seat to the craziest campaign in American history, and my friend, who we may come in on the weekend. Brian Karem, executive editor for the Sentinel newspapers, veteran journalist and anchor Carole Simpson, and Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com. Thank you all for being here. And Katy, amiga mia, let me start with you and get you to respond and get your reaction to Donald Trump's tweet just this morning, in which he retweeted a GIF of himself when he was a performer on the WWE. Here it is. Oh, okay. Well, I'll describe it to you. It's basically, for those viewers who have not seen it yet, it's Donald Trump showing himself body slamming a character in the WWE. Here it is. There it is. And he puts there fraud news CNN, and then the hashtag FNN, which I inadvertently last hour said was Fox News Network, is actually fraud news network. And really quickly, here's the White House Homeland Security Advisor, Thomas Bossert, who was on This Week responding to that tweet showing Trump, in his mind, beating up CNN. Take a look.
Is that the kind of communication you want, that he's beating up on somebody? Well, that he's beating up on the media? Right. You're in charge of Homeland Security there. Yep. That seems like a threat.
Yeah, certainly not, though. I think that no one would perceive that as a threat. I hope they don't. But I do think that he's beaten up in a way on cable platforms that he has a right to respond to.
Katy, as somebody who was penned in those media pens during the campaign to be jeered at, sometimes by name, by Donald Trump, do you see that tweet that Donald Trump sent out as threatening?
First off, I think Tom Bossert could have been looking at a picture of kittens playing with each other, and he would have given the same response. It doesn't matter what's being shown. Right. The White House is going to have the same response, which is Donald Trump has a platform to talk to the people, and that's a very important platform. And also, no, of course, this is not what you're actually seeing in front of your eyes. Donald Trump has advocated violence. He's certainly not condemned violence, at least not strongly. On the campaign trail, he did it a number of times. He talked about how he would love to punch a protester in Las Vegas. He talked about how the police weren't strong enough and what it would have been like in the good old days. He talked about how a protester who was punched and kicked by his supporters maybe deserved to get roughed up. He talked about paying the legal bills of a man who sucker punched a protester. He talked about paying the man's legal bills, and the man, I think, tried to get his legal bills paid after that. So for Sarah Huckabee Sanders to say that he never advocates violence, it's beyond ludicrous. Baloney. It's now just sad.
Yeah. And just really quickly to stay with you for a minute, you know, when reporters were actually arrayed in those pens at Trump rallies, how did Trump's followers react to his exhortations against the media? How did they actually react?
I'm not going to paint Trump's supporters and followers with a broad brush, because they're not all horrible, terrible people who wanted to, you know, kick the A of the media. That's not factually correct. But when Donald Trump Trump was in those rallies and he was whipping up the crowds, they were a part of it, and they would turn in unison. I think I wrote about it like a giant unchained animal, and boo and yell and scream at the media, and it got very tense and it got very scary at moments.
Yeah.
It would only take one person to take what Donald Trump was saying seriously or literally and go to the extreme and take it one step further. Not the majority, but there were a good portion of people in those rooms who realized that this was part of the show, part of the act, and they were in on it. And there was another good portion who just furiously hates the media and thinks we're a bunch of liars no matter what we do. One-on-one, Trump supporters were mostly lovely, but when you get that group pack mentality, that's when it got frankly scary at times.
Yeah, and you know, let me go to Brian on this, because Brian, you had this viral moment of standing up to you know, the Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's only doing her job, which is to please her audience of one, Donald Trump, and say whatever he does is magnificent, and why aren't you covering his magnificence? You know, we're in a situation now. Well, first of all, just tell me what set you off. Why did you do that?
Well, it had been a week since we had had an on-camera press briefing. She started out by telling us we should watch a video that she wasn't sure was accurate or not, but boy, if it was, gosh, it was bad. So she wanted us to look at alleged fake media, accused us of being fake media, and then she she went out of her way to bash us, and I'd had enough. It's a week of, look, he started out telling me I'm the enemy of the people. I'm not the enemy of the people. We are the people. He's the enemy of the people because he continually tries to cleave us from the rest of us. That's not right. That's not what America is about. There isn't anybody in that press room, including those that are considered right-wing and conservative, that are doing anything more than doing their job.
Yeah.
Where they're asking questions. That's our job. And he continues to belittle us, tries to put us down, and is undermining the very foundation of this republic. You know, you feel at times, I use the joke, you're like Rodney Dangerfield searching for respect. We respect him. He needs to respect us.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is he doesn't. He wants to put out one message. The message is that he's great. And the fact of the matter is we need to ask questions. I would love nothing more than to cover policy. I've been accused by some who say that I was trying to make myself part of the story. Here's the story. He made us part of the story when he singled us out.
Yeah.
Now, at this point in time, you can either stand up for your rights or you're going to get blown over. Oppression, if you concede to oppression, you will be oppressed. And the fact of the matter is this guy is at war with the press. We have to stand up for our rights. It's that simple. Before I can do the rest of my job, before I can tell you the policy debates, before I can tell you what's important about national security, before I can tell you what's important about health care, I've got to be able to get access to the information to do so. And the fact of the matter is, he wants to keep us away from that access. And when I say I'm tired of being bullied, I'm not talking about Sean Spicer or even Sarah. Those two have done some remarkable things, and I'll defend what they've done as far as creating access for reporters. The bully in the room is the President of the United States. He's got to quit being a bully, he's got to grow up, and he's got to be presidential. If he wants to get his message across, he's got to quit muddling it with his own emotion.
And you know, Carole, you know, you're a veteran journalist, and you are a veteran journalist on this panel. You've been at this for a very long time, and I'm going to ask you if you've seen anything quite like this, including the fact that Glenn Thrush of the New York Times and Maggie Haberman have reported that Sean Hannity, who is the host of a right-wing TV show on Fox News, is an informal advisor to Donald Trump and has urged him to crack down much harder on media, essentially sanctioning the kind of attacks that Donald Trump personally made against Mika Brzezinski this week. What are your thoughts, and what can the media do about it? I mean, should the media stop showing up to these press conferences? Should they take out their phones and start live streaming them? What would you advise journalists to do, and have you ever seen anything like this?
Never seen anything like this, and I've been a journalist for 40 years, and I covered part of the Carter administration and the Reagan administration and George H.W. Bush. And we know that the presidents don't like us. They make no secret that they don't particularly care for what we do. But our job is to be a representative of the American people. And I have been so disgusted and so frustrated and so upset by what I have seen the White House press corps endure. And Brian, I have to tell you, you're my new hero. When you started talking, I watch all the briefings, and I was like, finally, somebody's going to kick back, push back on this hatred toward the media. So I wanted the rest of the press corps to join up, stand up with you, and continue. Yeah. Maybe shouting freedom of the press.
I'd
freedom
like that
of the
too.
press.
Yeah. And what do you, Carole,
what
did you make of this tweet this morning, the WWE tweet by Donald Trump?
That he wants to fight us. He wants to beat us up. He doesn't want us around.
Well, I'm a former football coach. Good luck.
Yeah. And Jason, you know, aside from the sort of the kind of, you know, inciting the public to disbelieve the press and to disdain the press, you also have the fact that Trump people go out and don't really have the ability to speak for him or don't seem to know what to do to speak for him. This is Meet the Press this morning. Chuck Todd had a back and forth with the Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price about his tweets. Take a listen.
I'm just asking you as a father, if your son tweeted about a woman like that, what would you say to him?
Chuck, you know, this is really remarkable. You got incredible challenges across this nation, incredible challenges around the world. The challenge that I've been given is to address the health care issues. And your program, a program with the incredible history of Meet the Press, and that's what you want to talk about?
Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, you're blaming me for what the President of the United States has spent his entire week focused on?
Jason, you're witness.
You know, look, the jury is now back. It's very clear that we have a dictator in the making. I know that still seems controversial, but this is how it starts. If you look at Turkey, if you look at different countries throughout history, they bit by bit go to war with any and everyone who can actually stand against them in the form of providing information to the people. And here's the thing. I understand, you know, I talk to my students about this. I talk to fellow journalists. I understand why people can't just boycott, because the economic imperative of being a journalist is getting access. They have to get information. That's how you provide your stories. But I do think this. At this point, it would be necessary and wise for many of these outlets to just go in there and say, look, every time I talk to a member of this administration, I'm going to pull out my phone. Because if you can't get an honest answer from the representatives, whether it's Tom Price or Sarah Huckabee or Sean Spicer or Kellyanne Conway, you at least have to record the lies that you're getting. And at some point, we have to have a press that'll stand up and say, look, the economics of this, while important, are not as important as doing our fundamental jobs. And that's the only way you can battle this administration. Because if he's doing this in 6 months, imagine what it's going to look like by 2018.
Katie first and then Brian.
The press is standing up for themselves. The press is standing up for themselves by and large. And you have people like Brian who are pushing back against Sarah Huckabee Sanders in that briefing, and that's fantastic. You have our own reporters like Kristen Welker who says, shouldn't the president be held to a higher standard than cable news hosts? You have Jim Acosta at CNN who's been going, Kristen's amazing, who's been going after this administration in that briefing room since day one. And so that's not it. The representatives of this White House, the cabinet members, the directors, the spokespeople, the Homeland Security director, all of them are, I mean, what they're doing right now is pathetic. It's pathetic when they go out and they try.
There's part of a problem as a reporter you've got to address.
Hold on, Brian.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Katie first, go ahead.
It's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's pathetic when they try to go out and say that we don't see what is very clearly in front of our eyes every single day, and that's what they're doing. And sorry, my hair was covering my microphone.
The other side.
The other side. Sorry, it's a Sunday, guys. You know, I'm not used to being on television today. No, it's pathetic what they're doing. So they're going out and they're saying, I know that you know, the president, his new clothes look wonderful. It's the emperor wears no clothes every single day. And when Sarah Huckabee Sanders says, oh, you know, he's never advocated violence, it's almost like your head wants to explode when he does that. Anyway, Brian, go on. I'm sorry, I kept talking.
The question a lot of people have, Brian, is then what do reporters do with that? If you're being told something that you know is a lie, that you know is false, and that yet your job is to go back to your news organization and tell them what the president's spokesman said, what are journalists supposed to do?
Well, that's a good question.
Joy,
there's two things.
Brian and then Carole. Brian, then Carole.
There's two institutional problems that you have to overcome. First of all, we are trained from the very beginning not to be part of the story.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to do your job without being a part of the story. Unfortunately, as I said, he's made us part of the story, and he's not going to let go. For those who think, well, we could just do our job, keep our head down, and plow forward, how's that working for you so far?
Yeah.
Well, it's not. You've got to stand up, and you've got to take a stand before you can do your job. The press together has to make some kind of statement that this is not tolerated, cannot be tolerated, is intolerable under this republic.
Yep.
Now, we're not very good at working together. We're very good at eating our own. But these are different times, and as my friend Major Garrett at CBS said, the rules are completely different now. So you cannot play by the old rules. Yeah. I'm not looking for the fight. The fight found us, and I'll be daggone if I'm going to be bullied. It's not right.
Yeah.
It's simply not right.
Absolutely.
And when they come and tell us that he isn't against violence, that's obviously something we have to confront with the facts.
Yeah, and very quickly before I go to Carole, because there was a different protocol set up in the Bush era, and it shows you sort of what the Trump people want, what they sort of want. They used to have a ringer in the White House press room. There was a pattern, and this is from a story from February 11, 2005. There was a pattern in which the White House press secretary, Scott McClellan, would be getting a more aggressive and less than friendly question, and he would then call on Jeff Gannon to change the subject, and then he would get a softball question in return. Let's listen to Jeff Gannon, the fake reporter who used to be planted in the White House press corps, in action.
Senate Democratic leaders have painted a very bleak picture of the U.S. economy. Harry Reid was talking about soup lines, and Hillary Clinton was talking about the economy being on the verge of collapse. Yet, in the same breath, they say that Social Security is rock solid and there's no crisis there. How are you going to work? You've said you're going to reach out to these people. How are you going to work with people who seem to have divorced themselves from reality?
And that man was not, in fact, a reporter. He actually had some outre sort of posts online that we won't get into right now. But Carole Simpson, the idea is that every administration would love to have our Jeff Gannon, a ringer, that when the heat got too tough, they could go to a friend. And this White House has tried to stack LifeZed and friendly blogs in the room. It hasn't stopped the tough questions. Is there any... Give us a route out here. Give us a road out.
Well, I'm thinking of Katy and I'm thinking of Brian. What you gonna do?
You tell the truth. You go out there and you push back and you tell the truth, which is what we do every day.
You need Katy, you need a critical mass of all of you walking out, boycotting. Something drastic must be done. This will get worse and worse and worse, and you're trying to go through channels and do the right thing. Obviously, it's not working. So the press needs to join together. I'm one of the old-timers who covered presidents, you know, in the 70s and 80s, but I think we were closer together and would have really shared this burden, this falsehood. I just think about him saying fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news. That is subtly getting into people's brains.
Yeah, and really quickly, as we go out, very quickly, Jason, you seem to agree with the civil disobedience era, and then I'm going to have Katy get the last word.
Yeah, look, I mean, he can't stop everybody. And like I said, I understand that, you know, there's a business element here. We all need access to the president. He is the president of the United States. But if everybody brought out their cell phone cameras, if everybody just recorded audio, they can't have an empty room. Because as arrogant and as aggressive as this administration has been, they love the press as much as they say they hate them. They just want a press that's friendlier. So I do think some collective action, even within the economic confines of trying to get access to this presidency, it's possible. It can be done.
And so, Katy,
you can't just walk out of the White House press briefing. This is the president of the United States. You have to cover this administration, even if they're making it impossible for you to do that. It would be great for all the news networks to band together and say, yeah, we're going to walk out. But the reality is, you've got to be there. You've got to try and get information out. Then we push back when you can, and you have to just try your hardest to get to the heart of it. It's not going to be good for any of us if all of Donald Trump's supporters or the rest of America suddenly feels like, you know what, maybe they are against him. Maybe they are trying to take him down. It is a very fine line. We haven't figured out how quite to walk it yet, but just getting up and walking out of that press briefing room is not a good idea.
This is a great debate.
No,
we're going to have to reassemble.
Yeah.
We're going to reassemble panel Voltron again, because this is like a great panel. We went a little long.
I'll try to remember how to be on TV in the summer.
It's all good. No, it's okay. We love it. And your hair looks amazing. So it's all good. Thank you very much to Katy Tur, my pal, and Brian Karem, Carole Simpson, the great Carole Simpson, Jason Johnson. Fabulous panel. And